My daughter-in-law caused the crash and fled without calling for help. Days later, she walked into my ICU room dressed in black, thinking I was in a coma. She leaned in and whispered, "Just die already, you useless hag." I opened my eyes instantly and grabbed her wrist tight. She screamed in terror, not because I woke up, but because I pointed to the curtain behind her, where a face she knew all too well stepped out. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The face belonged to Dr. Nathan Ford, the same man I had seen kissing my daughter-in-law in the hospital parking lot 3 weeks before the accident. The smell hit me first when I regained consciousness. Antiseptic mixed with something floral and expensive. Kimberly's perfume. She had worn the same scent at my husband's funeral 2 years ago, standing too close to the casket, dabbing fake tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. I kept my eyes closed. 37 years as an ER nurse had taught me that the most dangerous patients were the ones who seemed unconscious. I had seen enough overdoses, enough domestic violence victims, enough attempted suicides to know that stillness could be a weapon. The heart monitor beeped steadily. I controlled my breathing, kept it slow and even. My body felt wrong, heavy in places, numb in others. There was a tube in my throat, another in my arm. The crash came back in fragments. Kimberly driving, the rain, her phone lighting up with a text, the sudden jerk of the wheel. The doctor said she might not wake up at all. Kimberly's voice was low, practiced. The swelling in her brain is significant. We should start discussing options. Options? My son Jason's voice cracked. Mom's been in here for 4 days. We're not discussing options. Jason, honey, I know this is hard, but we have to be realistic. Your mother wouldn't want to live like this, hooked up to machines, unable to speak or move. It's not dignified. I heard shoes squeaking on linoleum. Someone pacing. Jason, probably. He had always been a pacer, even as a child. The doctor said there's still brain activity. Jason said. She could wake up. Could. But what kind of life would that be? Even if she wakes up, the damage. I'm not pulling the plug on my mother, Kim. Jesus Christ. Silence. I could picture Kimberly's face, the way her lips would thin when she didn't get her way, the way her eyes would go flat and cold. I'm just trying to prepare you, she said finally. I've seen this before at work. Families hold on too long, and then they have to watch their loved ones suffer for months. Sometimes the kindest thing, more silence, then footsteps. The door opening and closing. Jason leaving, I assumed. I waited, counting heartbeats on the monitor. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then I felt movement near my bed, fabric rustling, that expensive perfume getting stronger. You know, Kimberly whispered, her breath hot against my ear. I should have made sure the crash killed you. Nathan said the airbag might not deploy if we disconnected the sensor. He was wrong. My heart rate spiked. I fought to control it, to keep the monitor from betraying me. 3 years I've waited. 3 years watching you hover over Jason like he was still a child, criticizing my cooking, making comments about when we were going to have kids, as if it was any of your business. Her hand touched my face, cold fingers against my cheek. The insurance policy was my idea, you know. $2 million. Jason thought it was morbid, but I convinced him it was just good planning. After all, you were getting older, living alone in that big house. Accidents happen. She laughed softly. It was a sound I had heard before. At dinner parties, at family gatherings. The charming laugh she used to win people over. But alone with me in this room, it sounded different. Hollow. Practiced. Nathan will adjust your medication tonight. Just a small change. Nobody will question it. He's the attending physician. They'll say it was a complication from the accident. Tragic, really. And I'll be right there holding Jason's hand, being the supportive wife. I had to move. Had to do something. But my body felt like it belonged to someone else. The paralysis wasn't from the accident. It was from the sedatives they had been pumping into me for days. I could feel my fingers now, could feel my toes. The numbness was fading. Just die already, you useless hag. The words hung in the air. and something inside me snapped. My eyes flew open. My hand shot up and grabbed her wrist. The strength surprised both of us. Adrenaline, probably, or the remnants of 40 years of hauling patients and equipment. Kimberly's scream was beautiful, high and raw and terrified. She tried to pull away, but I held on, my grip tightening until I could feel the bones of her wrist grinding together. What? How? She was sputtering, her perfect composure shattered. I couldn't speak with the tube in my throat, but I could point. And I did. At the curtain behind her, at the shadow that had been standing there the whole time. Nathan Ford stepped out, his face ashen. He was still wearing his white coat, his hospital ID badge swinging against his chest. The same man I had seen pressing Kimberly against a car in the parking garage 3 weeks ago. The same man who was supposed to be adjusting my medication tonight. But something was wrong. He wasn't looking at Kimberly with concern or complicity. He was looking at her like he had never seen her before. "Detective Webb," he said, his voice hollow. "I think you heard everything you needed." Another figure stepped out from behind the curtain, a man in a rumpled suit, holding a small recording device. He was maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair and the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much. "Ford came to us this morning," the detective said. "Seems he had second thoughts about your little arrangement, Mrs. Mitchell." Kimberly's face cycled through emotions. Shock, fear, calculation, rage. She tried to pull away from me again, and this time I let her go. My fingers were cramping anyway. "This is ridiculous," she said, straightening her black dress. I was upset. I didn't mean—" "You just confessed to planning your mother-in-law's murder," Detective Webb said, "on tape. I think you meant every word." I watched Kimberly's mask slip completely. The charming smile, the sympathetic eyes, the helpful daughter-in-law, all of it melted away, leaving something cold and calculating underneath. "Nathan." She turned to Dr. Ford. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them." "I'm done," he said. "I'm done with all of it. The affair, the plan, everything." He looked at me, and I saw something like shame in his eyes. I never should have listened to her. When she first suggested it, I thought she was joking, a sick joke about her mother-in-law. But then she showed me the insurance policy. She showed me how easy it would be. "Shut up," Kimberly hissed. "Just shut up. We were going to run away together. That was the plan. After you died, after she collected the insurance money, we were going to start over somewhere else." Dr. Ford ran a hand through his hair. "But I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand in this room and watch you die knowing I caused it." Detective Webb was writing something in a small notebook. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm placing you under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The door burst open. Jason stood in the doorway, his face white. He looked at his wife, at the detective, at me lying in the hospital bed with my eyes finally open. "Mom?" His voice was small. The voice of a little boy who had just discovered the world wasn't what he thought it was. I couldn't speak. The tube was still in my throat, and a nurse was rushing in now, checking monitors, calling for assistance. But I could see Jason's face as he pieced together what he was witnessing. His wife in handcuffs, a detective reading her rights, a doctor who couldn't meet his eyes. "Kim?" Jason's voice broke. "Kim, what's going on?" Kimberly looked at him, and for a moment I saw something human in her eyes, something that might have been love, or at least the memory of it. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "It's a misunderstanding," she said. "Your mother is confused. The accident—" "Ma'am, stop talking," Detective Webb said. "Anything you say, call Robert Chen," Kimberly said to Jason, ignoring the detective. "He's a criminal lawyer. His card is in my purse. Tell him to meet me at the police station." "Kim, I don't understand." "Just do it, Jason." Her voice was sharp now, all pretense of warmth abandoned. "Do something useful for once in your life." They led her out. The clicking of her heels echoed down the hospital corridor, then faded. Jason stood frozen in the doorway. I tried to reach for my son, but my arms were too heavy. The nurse was adjusting my IV, and I felt the fog of sedation beginning to creep in. Mitchell. Detective Webb's voice was gentle. I know this is a lot to process, but your mother needs you right now. She's been through something terrible, and she's going to need support as she recovers. Jason walked to my bedside like a man in a dream. He took my hand, the same hand that had grabbed Kimberly's wrist moments before, and held it gently. Mom. Tears were streaming down his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I squeezed his fingers. It was all I could manage before the sedation pulled me under again. But I needed him to know. I didn't blame him. Not yet, anyway. He had been fooled, just like I had been fooled. Just like everyone who met Kimberly and saw the charming smile, the helpful nature, the perfect daughter-in-law. The last thing I saw before I went under was Dr. Ford standing in the corner, his face buried in his hands. He was crying, too. Whether from guilt or relief or self-pity, I couldn't tell. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was just the beginning. The woman who had tried to kill me was married to my son. She had a lawyer on speed dial and enough cunning to have fooled everyone for 3 years. Handcuffs wouldn't hold her for long. And the doctor who was supposed to murder me tonight was now the prosecution's star witness. I needed to survive. I needed to heal. I needed to understand exactly how deep this conspiracy went. Because lying in that hospital bed, paralyzed and sedated, I had realized something terrifying. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting to protect my son from the woman he still loved. And love, I knew from 37 years in emergency rooms, was the most dangerous condition of all. The tube came out of my throat on the second day after Kimberly's arrest. The first words I spoke were, water, and then, where is my son? The nurse, a young woman named Angela with kind eyes and efficient hands, told me Jason had been in the waiting room for 18 hours straight. He had only left twice, once to give a statement to the police, once to throw up in the bathroom. He's a mess, Angela said, adjusting my pillows. But he hasn't left the floor. Do you want me to get him? I nodded. My throat felt like I had swallowed sandpaper, but the pain was a welcome reminder that I was alive, that Kimberly's plan had failed. Jason appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. He looked like he had aged 10 years. His shirt was wrinkled, eyes red-rimmed, jaw covered in stubble. This was my son, the man who had trusted the wrong woman. Mom. His voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Sit down, I said. The words came out scratchy, barely above a whisper. We need to talk. He pulled a chair close to my bed and sat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The monitors beeped softly. Somewhere down the hall, a phone was ringing. Tell me everything, I said finally. From the beginning. Jason ran his hands through his hair. I don't even know where to start. The police have been questioning me for hours. They think I might have been involved. The question hung between us like a knife. Jason's face crumpled. God, no. I had no idea what she was planning. I didn't know about her and... He couldn't say the doctor's name. I didn't know about any of it. I watched my son's face. 37 years of reading patients had taught me to recognize liars, the way their eyes would shift, the way their hands would fidget, the slight hesitation before they spoke. Jason wasn't lying. He was devastated. The insurance policy, I said. You knew about that. He nodded miserably. Kim said it was just planning ahead. You were getting older and we wanted to make sure you were taken care of. I thought it was a good idea. His voice broke. I didn't know she was planning to collect on it. $2 million. I know, the detective told me. He showed me the policy documents, the text messages between Kim and, again, he couldn't say the name. She was going to let you die and then run away with him, with my money, with our money. I reached out and took Jason's hand. His fingers were cold, trembling. This isn't your fault, I said. She fooled all of us, but I married her. I brought her into our family. I defended her when you said something was off. He was crying now, tears streaming down his unshaven face. You told me, Mom. 3 years ago, at Christmas. You said something wasn't right about her. You said she was too perfect, too polished. And I told you that you were being paranoid. that you couldn't accept me being happy. I remembered that conversation. We had been standing in my kitchen, arguing over Kimberly's absence from the family dinner. She had claimed a work emergency, but something about her excuse had felt wrong, rehearsed. I should have trusted you, Jason said. I should have listened. You loved her. Love makes us blind. The door opened. Detective Webb entered, carrying a paper bag and 2 coffees. He looked exhausted. Mrs. Mitchell, good to see you awake. He handed a coffee to Jason, then gave me some broth from the cafeteria. I accepted it gratefully. The warm liquid soothed my raw throat. I need to ask you some questions, Detective Webb said, pulling up another chair. About the accident. About what you remember. I closed my eyes and let the memories surface. They came in fragments, like shards of a broken mirror. We were driving back from dinner, I said slowly. A restaurant in East Nashville. Kim's idea. She said she wanted to spend more time with me, to improve our relationship. What time did you leave the restaurant? Around 9. Maybe 9:30. It was raining. Hard. Kim offered to drive because my night vision isn't great anymore. The memories sharpened. I could see Kimberly behind the wheel, her profile illuminated by the dashboard lights. Her phone had buzzed 3 times during dinner. She had ignored it, but her eyes had kept drifting to her purse. We were on the highway, I-40, I think. Kim was driving fast, faster than I liked. I asked her to slow down. What happened next? Her phone lit up. A text message. She glanced at it just for a second and then I opened my eyes. She didn't swerve to avoid the truck. She swerved into it. Detective Webb was writing in his notebook. You're saying she intentionally caused the accident? I'm saying she turned the wheel toward the truck, not away from it. I remember screaming. I remember the impact. And then nothing until I woke up in this room. Jason had gone pale. Mom, are you sure? Maybe in the confusion? I'm sure. I looked at my son. I spent 40 years in emergency rooms. I've seen hundreds of car accidents. I know the difference between losing control and aiming. Detective Webb nodded slowly. That matches what Dr. Ford told us. He said Mrs. Mitchell had been planning the accident for weeks. They had chosen that stretch of highway because the guardrails were damaged. They expected the car to go over the embankment. But it didn't, I said. Another driver saw the accident and called 911 immediately. The response time was under 4 minutes. He paused. Mrs. Mitchell, Kimberly, fled the scene before the ambulance arrived. She told the police later that she had been in shock, that she went to find help. But we have footage from a gas station camera showing her making a phone call from her cell phone. The call was to Dr. Ford. Jason stood abruptly and walked to the window. His shoulders were shaking. There's more, Detective Webb said. He pulled a manila folder from his bag. We executed a search warrant on Dr. Ford's home and office yesterday. We found evidence that he had been altering your medical records. What kind of alterations? Dosage changes. He was planning to give you a medication that would have caused cardiac arrest, made it look like a complication from the accident. The detective slid a document across my bed tray. This is a copy of the order he was going to enter into the system. The timestamp shows he created it the night before your daughter-in-law's arrest. I looked at the document. The medical jargon was familiar. I had written similar orders thousands of times during my career. But seeing my own name at the top, seeing the lethal dosage that was meant to kill me, made my stomach turn. How did you know? I asked. How did you know to be in my room that day? Ford contacted us. He got cold feet at the last minute. Detective Webb leaned back in his chair. He's cooperating fully with the investigation. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he's agreed to testify against Mrs. Mitchell. She'll say he's lying. She'll say it was all his idea. She already is. Her lawyer filed a motion this morning claiming that Dr. Ford manipulated and coerced her. He smiled thinly. But we have the text messages. We have the insurance documents. We have your testimony. And we have a recording of her confessing to attempted murder while standing over your hospital bed. Jason turned from the window. What happens now? Now we build our case. The DA is pushing for first-degree attempted murder, conspiracy, and insurance fraud. If convicted, she's looking at 20 to life. 20 years. Kimberly would be in her 50s when she got out. Assuming she got out at all. There's one more thing, Detective Webb said. He pulled another document from his folder. We found emails between Mrs. Mitchell and Dr. Ford discussing your late husband's death. The room went still. Even the monitors seemed to quiet. My husband died of a heart attack, I said slowly. 3 years ago, at home. I know. But according to these emails, Mrs. Mitchell and Dr. Ford were already involved at that time. They met at a medical conference 6 months before your husband passed. He paused. The emails suggest they were discussing ways to accelerate his condition. I couldn't breathe. The broth suddenly tasted like ash in my mouth. Are you saying— Jason's voice was barely audible. Are you saying Kim killed my father? I'm saying we're reopening the investigation into your father's death. We're requesting an exhumation order. The room spun. I gripped the bed rails, trying to anchor myself to something solid. My husband, my David. We had been married for 32 years. He had survived cancer, had survived a triple bypass, had survived everything life threw at him. And then one morning he was gone, collapsed on the kitchen floor with a coffee cup still in his hand. The doctors had said it was natural, a weak heart finally giving out. I had accepted it because I had no reason not to. But Kimberly had been there that morning. She had stopped by to drop off something for Jason. She had been the one to find David. She had been the one to call 911. I let her into my home, I whispered. I let her into my family, and she killed my husband. Detective Webb stood. We don't have proof yet, but we're working on it. He handed me a card. If you remember anything else, anything about that morning, anything about her behavior before or after, call me, day or night. He left. Jason remained by the window, staring out at the Nashville skyline. I married her, he said. His voice was hollow, dead. I brought her into our lives, and she killed Dad. We don't know that yet. Yes, we do. He turned to face me. We both know it, Mom. She did this, all of it, and I helped her. I defended her. I chose her over you, over Dad, over everyone. I need to go. He was already moving toward the door. I can't. I need to think. But he was gone. The door swung shut behind him, leaving me alone in the hospital room with the beeping monitors and the weight of what I had just learned. Kimberly hadn't just tried to kill me. She had killed my husband. She had infiltrated my family, married my son, and systematically destroyed everything I loved. And somewhere out there, she was sitting in a jail cell, probably plotting her next move. The broth had gone cold. I pushed it aside and stared at the ceiling. I had survived the crash. I had survived the attempted murder. But I was beginning to realize that surviving was just the beginning. I needed to know the full truth. About Kimberly. About Dr. Ford. About the night my husband died. And I needed to make sure that woman never hurt anyone in my family again. The exhumation happened on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Kimberly's arrest. I watched from a folding chair at the edge of the cemetery, wrapped in a wool coat that felt too big for my shrinking frame. Jason stood beside me, one hand on my shoulder. David's grave had been well maintained. Fresh flowers sat in a vase. Jason's doing, probably. The headstone read, David Mitchell, 1957-2021. Beloved husband and father. Beloved. The word felt hollow now. The backhoe broke ground at 9 o'clock. The sound of metal scraping against earth made me flinch. This was wrong. This was all wrong. My husband should be resting in peace, not being dug up like evidence. But that's exactly what he was now. Evidence. Detective Webb stood nearby, talking quietly with the medical examiner. They had explained the procedure to me the day before. The coffin would be transported to the state forensic lab, where a team of specialists would perform a second autopsy. They were looking for traces of potassium chloride, a drug that could cause cardiac arrest and was nearly impossible to detect without knowing what to look for. Kimberly's emails had mentioned potassium chloride. She had asked Dr. Ford about dosages, about timing, about how long it would take to work. Are you okay? Jason's voice was low, tight. No, I said, but I need to be here. The coffin emerged from the ground just before noon. It was intact, though the wood had darkened with age and moisture. I watched them load it into a white van with tinted windows. Mrs. Mitchell. Detective Webb approached. his face somber. "We should have preliminary results within a week. I'll call you as soon as we know anything." He hesitated. "There's something else. We've been looking into Dr. Ford's background. He has a history." "What kind of history?" "2 malpractice suits in the past 5 years, both involving elderly patients who died under his care." He paused. "Both cases were settled out of court. The families were paid to stay quiet." I felt sick. "You're saying he's done this before?" "I'm saying there's a pattern. We're reopening those cases as well." He handed me a folder. "This is everything we've compiled on Dr. Ford. His testimony is still valuable, but I wanted you to know who you're dealing with." I took the folder, but didn't open it. There would be time for that later. The drive home was silent. Jason stared out the window at the Nashville skyline, his jaw clenched tight. I could see him processing everything: the affair, the murder plot, the possibility that his stepfather had been killed years ago. "I need to see her," he said suddenly. "Kim, I need to talk to her. I need to understand why." "Jason, that's not a good idea." "I don't care." He turned to face me. "I was married to her for 3 years. I loved her. I thought she loved me. And now I find out she was planning to kill my mother, that she might have killed my father, that she was sleeping with another man the entire time." His voice cracked. "I need to know if any of it was real. I need to know if she ever actually cared about me." I understood the impulse. After David died, I had spent months going through his things, looking for some sign that our marriage had meant something to him. Old letters, photographs, anything that proved our 32 years together weren't a lie. "She'll manipulate you," I said. "That's what she does." "I know, but I have to try." The jail was a gray concrete building on the outskirts of the city, Davidson County Jail, where they held defendants awaiting trial. I had driven past it hundreds of times during my years as a nurse, never imagining that someone I knew would end up inside. Jason went in alone while I waited in the car. The visiting room allowed only one person at a time, and I wasn't sure I could face her anyway. Not yet. Not without saying something that would hurt our case. I watched the clock on the dashboard tick through the minutes. 15, 30, 45. I thought about all the times Kimberly had sat in this same passenger seat, chatting about work or vacation plans or what she was making for dinner. All those conversations, all those smiles, all those lies. He came out after an hour, his face pale. Jason sat in the driver's seat but didn't start the car. His hands were shaking. She said it was all Nathan's idea, that he manipulated her, that she never meant for anyone to get hurt. He laughed bitterly. She cried. Real tears, or what looked like real tears. She said she still loved me. She said she made a terrible mistake, and she was sorry. Do you believe her? No. He finally looked at me. But I wanted to. Part of me still wants to. How sick is that? It's not sick. It's human. She's a monster, Mom. I know that now. But for a second, sitting across from her, seeing her cry, I almost believed her. I almost thought maybe we could work it out. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. I reached over and took his hand. That's why she's dangerous. She knows exactly how to make people believe what she wants them to believe. The preliminary toxicology results came back 5 days later. Detective Webb called me at 7 in the morning. "We found it," he said. "Potassium chloride. The levels in your husband's tissue were 3 times what would be lethal. Someone injected him with enough to kill a horse." I sat down heavily on my kitchen chair. The kitchen where David had died. The kitchen where Kimberly had found him that morning, already cold. Now we charge her with first-degree murder. Along with the attempted murder charge for you, she's looking at life without parole. He claims he didn't know about your husband. He says Kimberly told him she had experience with this kind of thing, but he assumed she was bluffing. Detective Webb paused. We're still investigating. But his cooperation has been valuable. The DA is offering him a deal. 15 years instead of life. 15 years for helping plan 2 murders? I know it seems light, but without his testimony, we might not be able to convict Kimberly at all. It's a trade-off. I hung up the phone and sat in the kitchen for a long time. The same kitchen where I had made breakfast for David every morning for 3 decades. The same kitchen where he had proposed to me, down on one knee with a ring that cost 3 months of his salary. the same kitchen where he had died, alone and afraid, while a woman he barely knew injected him with poison. Jason came over that afternoon. I showed him the report, the toxicology results, the medical examiner's findings, the timeline Detective Webb had constructed. She arrived at 7:15, Jason read aloud. Dad called 911 at 7:32. He was dead by the time the ambulance arrived at 7:41. She had 17 minutes, I said. 17 minutes to kill him and stage the scene. But why? What did she gain from Dad's death? I had been thinking about this for days. The insurance policy, the one on me. David was the original beneficiary. If I died, the money would have gone to him. But after David died, you became the beneficiary. And as your wife, she would inherit everything. Jason's face went gray. She killed Dad so she could eventually kill you and get the money. $2 million. That's what my life was worth to her. What both our lives were worth. The silence stretched between us. Outside, a cardinal landed on the bird feeder David had installed years ago. Red feathers bright against the gray winter sky. I'm going to testify, Jason said finally. Whatever they need me to say, I'll say it. I'll tell them about the insurance policy, about how she convinced me it was a good idea. I'll tell them about every lie she ever told me. She killed my father and tried to kill my mother. She made me an accomplice without my knowledge. He stood up, his jaw set. I'm not going to let her get away with it, even if it means telling the whole world what a fool I was. I stood and hugged my son. He felt thinner than I remembered, fragile in a way he hadn't been before. You weren't a fool, I said. You were in love. There's a difference. I didn't have an answer for that. The night before the grand jury hearing, I received a letter. No return address. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. You think you've won. You think Nathan's betrayal and Jason's testimony will be enough to put me away forever. But you don't know everything yet. There are secrets you haven't discovered. People you trust who can't be trusted. I made one mistake. I let Nathan live. I won't make that mistake again. I called Detective Webb immediately. He sent officers to sweep my house, to check for bugs and cameras. They found nothing. But the message was clear. Kimberly wasn't giving up. Even from her jail cell, she was planning her next move. The detective traced the letter to a post office in downtown Nashville. Security footage showed a woman in a baseball cap dropping it in the mailbox. Not Kimberly, obviously, since she was locked up. Someone on the outside was helping her. A friend, a colleague, someone we hadn't identified yet. She has connections, Detective Webb said. People who owe her favors. We're looking into it. I put the letter in a drawer and locked it. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in David's old recliner. She had killed my husband. She had tried to kill me. She had destroyed my son's faith in love and trust and human decency. But she hadn't broken me. Not yet. And as long as I was breathing, I was going to make sure she never hurt anyone in my family again. The grand jury indicted Kimberly on all charges. First-degree murder of David Mitchell, attempted murder of Deborah Mitchell, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. The news cameras were waiting outside the courthouse when she was transferred to the state prison to await trial. I watched the footage on my living room television. Kimberly in an orange jumpsuit, her hair unwashed, her wrists in handcuffs. She looked at the cameras and smiled. Not the charming smile I remembered from family dinners, but something colder, more calculating. She mouthed something to the cameras. I couldn't read her lips, but the message was clear enough. This isn't over. Detective Webb called me that evening. We identified the woman who mailed the letter, he said. Her name is Sandra Holloway. She worked with Kimberly at the marketing firm. Is she being charged? She claims she didn't know what was in the envelope. Says Kimberly asked her to mail it as a favor, said it was a birthday card for a friend. He paused. We can't prove otherwise, so we're letting her go. But we've warned her that any further contact with Kimberly will result in obstruction charges. What about the threat in the letter? The part about Nathan? We've increased security around Dr. Ford. He's being transferred to a federal facility until the trial. Kimberly won't be able to get to him. I wasn't so sure. Kimberly had already proven that she could reach beyond prison walls. One letter was just the beginning. The trial was scheduled for March, 4 months away. 4 months of waiting, of preparing, of looking over my shoulder every time I left the house. Jason moved in with me the week after the indictment. He said it was to help with my recovery, but I knew the real reason. He was afraid to be alone. The house he had shared with Kimberly was being sold, the proceeds frozen until the civil lawsuit was resolved. "I can't stop thinking about it," he said one night. We were sitting in the living room, the television on but muted. Every memory I have with her is poisoned now. Our wedding, our honeymoon, all those dinners and holidays and Sunday mornings. Was any of it real? Some of it might have been, I said. People are complicated. Even monsters can love, in their own twisted way. That doesn't make me feel better. It's not supposed to. He was quiet for a long moment. She's going to try something at the trial. You know that, right? Her lawyer is already working on a defense. Diminished capacity, battered woman syndrome. Claims that Nathan was the mastermind and she was just following orders. He shook his head. They're going to make her look like a victim. I had heard the same thing from Detective Webb. Kimberly's defense attorney was Marcus Chen, one of the best criminal lawyers in Tennessee. He had gotten acquittals in cases that seemed unwinnable. His strategy was always the same. Shift the blame, create doubt, humanize the defendant. The evidence is strong, I said. The emails, the toxicology report, the recording from the hospital room. A jury will see through her act. Will they? Jason's voice was bitter. I didn't. I lived with her for 3 years and I never saw it. Why would 12 strangers be any different? I didn't have an answer for that. The DA's office called me in for a preparation meeting 3 weeks before the trial. Assistant District Attorney Monica Reynolds was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been prosecuting murder cases for 20 years. I want to walk you through what to expect, she said. The defense is going to try to discredit you. They're going to suggest that your memory is unreliable because of the accident. They're going to bring up your age, your health, anything they can use to make the jury doubt your testimony. I was an ER nurse for 37 years. I've testified in court before. I know, but this is different. This is personal. She slid a document across the table. We've obtained additional evidence from Dr. Ford's apartment. Text messages, emails, a journal he kept documenting his relationship with Kimberly. I read through the document. The messages were explicit. Not just about the affair, but about the murder plot. Ford had documented everything. The dosages they discussed, the timeline they planned, the excuses they rehearsed. Why would he keep a record of this? I asked. Insurance. In case Kimberly tried to double-cross him. Monica leaned back in her chair. He's not a good person, Mrs. Mitchell. He helped plan 2 murders, but his testimony and his records are going to put Kimberly away for life. What about the other cases? The malpractice suits? We're looking into them. If we can prove a pattern, if we can show that Dr. Ford and Kimberly have done this before, the jury will have no doubt. I thought about Kimberly's letter, the threat against Nathan, the confidence in her words. She's planning something, I said. I can feel it. We've increased security. She's in maximum security isolation. She got a letter out. She has people on the outside helping her. Don't underestimate her. Monica studied me for a long moment. What do you think she's planning? I don't know. But she's not going to sit back and let us destroy her. She's going to fight, and she's going to fight dirty. 2 weeks before the trial, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Deborah. Kimberly's voice was soft, almost pleasant. I've missed our talks. My blood went cold. How did you get this number? I have friends. You'd be surprised how many people owe me favors. She laughed. I just wanted to tell you something. Woman to woman. I wouldn't do that. Not unless you want something to happen to Jason. I froze. What are you talking about? He goes running every morning. Same route, same time. Through the park by the river. Very predictable. Her voice hardened. Drop the charges, Deborah. Convince the DA to offer me a deal. 10 years, and I'll plead guilty to manslaughter. You killed my husband. And I'll kill your son if you don't cooperate. I called Detective Webb immediately. Within an hour, there were officers at my house, tracing the call, reviewing security footage from Jason's running route. She used a burner phone. The detective said, We can't trace it, but we're putting protection on Jason around the clock. She's inside a maximum security prison. How is she making calls? Corruption. Guards who look the other way. Smuggled phones. He shook his head. We're investigating, but these things take time. Time we didn't have. Jason took the news better than I expected. Or maybe worse. His face went blank, emotionless, like he had finally accepted that the woman he married was capable of anything. I'm not going to let her win, he said. I'll testify. I'll tell the jury everything. And if she sends someone after me, I'll be ready. No, Mom. Listen to me. He grabbed my shoulders, looked me in the eye. She killed Dad. She tried to kill you. She's threatening to kill me. If we back down now, she'll never stop. She'll spend the rest of her life hunting us. So what do you want to do? I want to fight. I want to take the stand and look her in the eye and tell the truth. I want the whole world to know what she is. I saw something in my son's face that I hadn't seen before. Not anger exactly. Resolve. The same resolve I had felt lying in that hospital bed, grabbing Kimberly's wrist, pointing at the curtain where Nathan Ford was hiding. Then we fight, I said. Together. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing. The DA's office coached us on what to expect, how to answer questions, how to stay calm under cross-examination. Jason practiced his testimony until he could recite it in his sleep. I went through every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence until I knew it by heart. Detective Webb kept us updated on the security situation. They had identified a guard at the prison who had been taking bribes, a man named Rodriguez who had been smuggling phones to inmates for months. He was arrested, and the phone line to Kimberly was cut. But we both knew that wouldn't stop her. She would find another way. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, going through the evidence files the DA had given me. Photos, documents, transcripts, a paper trail of death and deception. At the bottom of the stack, I found something I hadn't seen before. A photograph. Ford and Kimberly at a restaurant, laughing, their hands intertwined across the table. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 years ago, 6 months after David's death. 6 months after Kimberly had murdered my husband and stood by my side at his funeral, pretending to grieve. I stared at the photograph for a long time. Then I put it back in the file and went to bed. Tomorrow, the trial would begin. Tomorrow, I would face the woman who had destroyed my family. Tomorrow, I would tell my story to 12 strangers and pray they believed me. But tonight, I needed to rest. I needed to gather my strength for the battle ahead, because I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Kimberly Mitchell wasn't going down without a fight. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the trial. Reporters, spectators, curious onlookers, everyone wanted to see the woman who had murdered her father-in-law and tried to murder her mother-in-law. The case had made national news, a story of betrayal and greed that seemed too dramatic to be real. I sat in the front row, behind the prosecutor's table. Jason was beside me, his hand gripping mine. Detective Webb sat on my other side, a quiet presence of support. And across the aisle, Kimberly sat at the defense table in a navy blue suit, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup subtle and professional. She looked like what she had always pretended to be: a successful businesswoman, a devoted wife, a pillar of the community. She caught my eye and smiled. The same smile she had worn at family dinners and holiday gatherings. The same smile she had worn while she was planning my death. I didn't look away. I stared back until her smile faltered. The prosecutor, Monica Reynolds, opened with a timeline of the murders. She showed the jury the evidence, the emails between Kimberly and Dr. Ford, the toxicology reports, the recording from my hospital room. She painted a picture of a woman who had married into a family with the sole intention of taking everything they had. The defendant is not who she pretends to be, Monica said. Behind the charming smile and the helpful manner is a cold, calculating killer. She murdered David Mitchell for money. She tried to murder Deborah Mitchell for money. And when her plan failed, she threatened to kill her own husband, the man she had sworn to love and cherish, if his mother didn't drop the charges. Kimberly's lawyer, Marcus Chen, countered with a different narrative. He portrayed Kimberly as a victim of Dr. Ford's manipulation, A woman trapped in an abusive relationship who had been coerced into participating in crimes she never wanted to commit. My client made mistakes, Chen said. She was afraid, she was confused, she was under the control of a man who threatened her life. But she is not a murderer. She is a survivor. I listened to his opening statement with growing anger. He was good. He knew exactly which buttons to push, which emotions to exploit. By the time he finished, some of the jurors were looking at Kimberly with sympathy. Nathan Ford took the stand on the second day. He looked different than I remembered. Thinner, paler, his hair graying at the temples. Prison had not been kind to him. "Can you describe your relationship with the defendant?" Monica asked. "We were lovers, for approximately 4 years." He kept his eyes on the prosecutor, avoiding Kimberly's gaze. "She approached me at a medical conference in 2019. We began an affair shortly after." "And when did the defendant first discuss harming her in-laws?" "About 6 months into our relationship. She said her mother-in-law was in the way. She asked if I knew of any drugs that could cause a heart attack without being detected." "What was your response?" "I told her it was possible. I gave her information about potassium chloride." He paused. "I should have said no. I should have ended the relationship right there, but I was in love with her. Or I thought I was." The cross-examination was brutal. Marcus Chen attacked Dr. Ford's credibility, his character, his motives. He pointed out that Ford had been promised a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony. He suggested that Ford was the real mastermind and Kimberly was just following orders. "Isn't it true, Dr. Ford, that you pressured my client into this scheme? Isn't it true that you threatened to expose her affair to her husband if she didn't cooperate?" "That's not what happened." "Isn't it true that you are lying to this jury to save yourself?" "No," Dr. Ford's voice cracked. "I'm telling the truth. Kimberly planned everything. She chose the victims. She chose the method. All I did was provide the medical knowledge. I was called to testify on the 4th day. I had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed my answers, had steeled myself for the questions I knew were coming, but nothing could have prepared me for seeing Kimberly's face as I took the stand. She was watching me with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not fear, not calculation. Something colder, something empty, like she was looking at a piece of furniture that had outlived its usefulness. "Mrs. Mitchell," Monica began, "can you tell the jury what you remember about the accident?" I told them everything. The dinner at the restaurant, the rain, Kimberly's phone lighting up with a text, the deliberate turn of the wheel toward the truck, the impact, the darkness. "And what happened when you regained consciousness in the hospital?" "I heard my daughter-in-law and my son talking. She was trying to convince him to take me off life support. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. I kept my eyes closed. I wanted to hear what she would say when she thought I was unconscious. And what did she say? She said she should have made sure the crash killed me. She said her lover, Dr. Ford, was going to adjust my medication that night to cause cardiac arrest. She said they had already collected $2 million in insurance money when they killed my husband, and they were planning to do the same with me." The courtroom was silent. I could see the jurors' faces: shock, horror, disgust. Some of them were looking at Kimberly with open hatred. She leaned in close to my ear, I continued, and she said, "Just die already, you useless hag." That's when I grabbed her wrist. That's when I pointed at the curtain where Detective Webb was hiding. The cross-examination was exactly what I expected. Marcus Chen questioned my memory, my mental state, my motives. He suggested that the accident had caused brain damage, that my recollections were confused, that I had misinterpreted Kimberly's words. "Mrs. Mitchell, isn't it true that you never approved of your son's marriage? Concerns that your daughter-in-law wasn't good enough for him? Concerns that she wasn't being honest about who she was. And now that your husband is dead, tragically I might add, you're looking for someone to blame. Isn't that right?" I looked at Kimberly. She was staring at me, her face blank, her eyes cold. "I'm not looking for someone to blame," I said. "I know who killed my husband. She's sitting right there." Jason testified next. He told the jury about the insurance policy, about how Kimberly had convinced him it was a good idea. He told them about the threats she had made from prison. He told them about the letters and phone calls, the attempts to intimidate and manipulate. "She's not who I thought she was," Jason said. His voice was thick with emotion. "The woman I married doesn't exist. She was a character, a role, a performance, and I was too blind to see it." The defense put Kimberly on the stand on the 6th day. She was composed, articulate, sympathetic. She cried at all the right moments. She expressed remorse for her mistakes. She claimed that Dr. Ford had threatened to kill her if she didn't cooperate. "I was afraid," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Nathan told me he would hurt Jason if I tried to leave. He said he would make it look like an accident, just like he did with David. I didn't know what to do." I watched the jury. Some of them were buying it. I could see the doubt in their eyes, the hesitation. She was that good. But then Monica Reynolds stood for cross-examination, and she dismantled Kimberly's story piece by piece. She showed the jury the emails where Kimberly had initiated the murder plot. She played the recording from my hospital room, where Kimberly had bragged about planning my death for 3 years. She presented phone records showing that Kimberly had called Dr. Ford hundreds of times, not the behavior of a woman being coerced. "You wrote to Dr. Ford that you couldn't wait to be rid of your mother-in-law," Monica said. "You called her a useless hag and said you would dance on her grave. Does that sound like someone who was being forced?" Kimberly's composure cracked. "He told me to write those things. He was controlling me." "You also wrote that you took care of your father-in-law and it was easier than expected." "What did you mean by that?" "You murdered David Mitchell, didn't you? You injected him with potassium chloride while he was having breakfast. You watched him die on his kitchen floor. And then you called 911 and pretended to be the grieving daughter-in-law." "No." Kimberly's voice was rising. "That's not what happened." "Then what did happen, Mrs. Mitchell? Tell us the truth. For once in your life, tell us the truth." Kimberly looked at the jury, at her lawyer, at me, and then her mask fell away completely. "Fine," she said. Her voice was cold, flat. "You want the truth? I did it. All of it. David was pathetic. He was weak. He didn't deserve everything he had. And Deborah," she pointed at me, "she was always in the way, always watching, always judging. I couldn't breathe with her around." The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Marcus Chen tried to object, but Kimberly kept talking. "I don't regret it, any of it. The only thing I regret is getting caught." The judge declared a recess. Kimberly was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, still ranting, still spewing hatred. Jason was crying beside me. I put my arm around him and held him close. "It's over," I said. "It's finally over." But as I watched them take Kimberly away, I saw her turn and look at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes was absolute, and I knew that even behind bars, she would never stop hating us. The trial was essentially over. The jury had heard her confession from her own mouth. There was no defense left to make. Now all we could do was wait for the verdict. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I spent most of that time in the courthouse cafeteria, drinking bad coffee and trying not to think about what would happen if they found her not guilty. It seemed impossible after her outburst, after her confession in open court. But juries were unpredictable. I had seen enough wrongful acquittals during my years as a nurse to know that justice wasn't always served. Jason paced the hallway outside the courtroom. He couldn't sit still, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything but wait. I understood. The last year had been a slow-motion nightmare, and now it was finally coming to an end, one way or another. Detective Webb sat with me for part of the afternoon. He looked almost as tired as I felt. "Whatever happens," he said, "you should know that we did everything we could. The evidence is overwhelming. If the jury doesn't convict, it won't be because we missed anything." "I know." I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, trying to absorb some warmth. "But I've seen guilty people walk free before. It happens. Not this time." His voice was firm. "She confessed in front of 12 jurors. She admitted to murdering your husband. There's no way they let her walk." At 4:30, the bailiff announced that the jury had reached a verdict. I took Jason's hand as we walked back into the courtroom. His palm was sweating, his fingers trembling. My son, who had been through more in the past year than most people experience in a lifetime, Kimberly was already at the defense table. She was calmer now, her earlier rage replaced by something hollow and defeated. Her lawyer sat beside her, his face carefully neutral. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. The foreperson stood, an older woman, maybe 65, with gray hair and reading glasses. She looked like someone's grandmother. She looked like me. "We have, Your Honor, on the charge of first-degree murder in the death of David Mitchell. How do you find?" "We find the defendant guilty." I heard Jason exhale beside me, a sharp, painful sound, relief and grief mixed together. "On the charge of attempted murder of Deborah Mitchell. How do you find? On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder? On the charge of insurance fraud?" The judge thanked the jury. Kimberly sat motionless, staring straight ahead. Her lawyer was speaking to her in low tones, probably explaining the appeals process, the sentencing hearing, the long road ahead. But I could tell she wasn't listening. As the bailiffs moved to take her back to custody, Kimberly turned and looked at me one last time. Her eyes were empty. Whatever spark of humanity had once been there, if there had ever been anything at all, was gone. "This isn't over," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. "You'll never be free of me." I didn't respond. I just held Jason's hand and watched them lead her away. The sentencing hearing took place 3 weeks later. Nathan Ford received 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder and medical fraud. He would be eligible for parole after 10 years, assuming good behavior. Kimberly received life without the possibility of parole. The judge spoke for nearly an hour, describing the cold-blooded and calculating nature of her crimes. He mentioned David, the husband she had murdered in his own kitchen. He mentioned me, the mother-in-law she had tried to kill twice. He mentioned Jason, the husband she had manipulated and betrayed. "The defendant has shown no remorse," the judge said. "She has shown no empathy for her victims. She has shown no capacity for rehabilitation or redemption. It is the judgment of this court that she spend the rest of her natural life in prison, where she can never harm another person again." Kimberly didn't react. She just stared straight ahead, her face blank, as they led her away for the last time. The months that followed were strange. The trial had consumed my life for so long that I wasn't sure what to do without it. I sold my house, the house where David had died, the house filled with memories I couldn't escape, and bought a smaller place on the outskirts of Nashville, a cottage with a garden and a view of the Cumberland River. Jason helped me move. He had gotten a new job, a fresh start at a different company. The divorce from Kimberly had been finalized while she was awaiting trial. All assets divided, all ties severed. He was free of her, legally at least. Emotionally was another matter. "I still dream about her sometimes," he admitted one evening. We were sitting on my new porch, watching the sunset paint the river gold and pink. I wake up, and for a second I forget. For a second I think she's still next to me, still pretending to be the woman I loved. "That will fade," I said. "Eventually. Will it?" He turned to look at me. "She killed Dad. She tried to kill you. She was sleeping with another man the entire time we were married, and part of me still misses her. How messed up is that?" "It's not messed up. It's human. You loved her, or you loved the person you thought she was. That doesn't disappear just because the truth comes out." He was quiet for a long moment. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't woken up? If Dr. Ford hadn't gone to the police?" "Sometimes." I watched a heron land on the riverbank, graceful and silent. I would have died. She would have collected the insurance money. She would have moved on to her next victim. How do people like her exist? How do they look you in the eye and lie so convincingly? I don't know. I've been a nurse for 40 years, and I still don't understand how someone can have so little regard for human life. I reached over and took his hand. "But I do know this. She's gone now. She can't hurt us anymore. And we survived. That's what matters." The anniversary of David's death came 6 months after Kimberly's conviction. Jason and I visited his grave together, his real grave, undisturbed now, marked with fresh flowers and clean stone. "I miss him," Jason said. "I didn't see him enough when he was alive. I was always busy with work, with Kim, with stupid things that didn't matter. He knew you loved him. Did he? I'm not sure I told him enough." I thought about David, his quiet strength, his terrible jokes, The way he used to hum old songs while he made breakfast. 32 years of marriage, ended by a woman who saw him as nothing more than an obstacle. "Your father was proud of you," I said. "He told me so every single day. He said you were the best thing we ever did." Jason wiped his eyes. "I'm going to try to be better. For him. For you. For whoever I end up with next." "There's no rush on that last part." "I know." He managed a small smile. "But I'm not going to let her ruin me. She took 3 years of my life. She doesn't get to take any more." I hugged my son in front of his father's grave. The November wind was cold, but neither of us moved. We had survived something terrible together, and that bond would never break. Life moved forward. It always does. I started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter 2 days a week. I talked to women who had been manipulated and abused by people who claimed to love them. Some of them reminded me of myself, trusting, hopeful, blind to the warning signs. Others reminded me of Jason, trapped in relationships with people who had no capacity for genuine connection. Jason started dating again, cautiously, a woman from his running club, quiet and kind. They took things slow, built a foundation of trust before jumping into anything serious. I liked her. She had honest eyes. Detective Webb checked in periodically. He had become something like a friend over the course of the investigation. Someone who understood what we had been through, what it had cost us. "The malpractice suits against Dr. Ford are being reopened," he told me during one of our coffee meetings. "We think there may be other victims, other families who lost loved ones to his treatment. Will Kimberly be implicated? We're looking into it. If she was involved in any of those deaths, we'll add charges. She's already serving life. But the families deserve to know the truth." The truth. Such a simple word for something so complicated. I had learned the truth about my daughter-in-law, about the woman my son had married, about the monster hiding behind a charming smile. But the truth hadn't made things easier. It had just made them clearer. Some people are born without the capacity for empathy. They move through the world taking what they want, hurting whoever gets in their way, wearing masks of normalcy that fool everyone around them. Kimberly was one of those people. She had fooled me, fooled Jason, fooled David. She had come into our family like a wolf in sheep's clothing and nearly destroyed us all. But we had survived. I sat on my porch one evening, watching the river flow past in the fading light. A year ago, I had been lying in a hospital bed, paralyzed and helpless, listening to my daughter-in-law plan my murder. Now I was here, in my new home, with my son just a phone call away and a life worth living ahead of me. The woman behind the curtain was gone. The truth had set us free, and for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten was possible.